Hello, students. This week we're working on thesis statements, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time in my video announcement for the week talking about thesis statements. I also want to spend some time talking about documentation, but I'll get to that second. The first thing I wanted to talk about today are thesis statements because you're working on your working thesis statement for the week. And thesis statements really are the most important sentence of your entire essay or project. Thesis statements are the one, sometimes two sentences where you state not only the main idea of your paper, but you should make an assertion or a point of some kind. And this is where a lot of students get confused. So in the past, I've had students struggle with the difference between like making an announcement about what your paper is about and then making a true thesis statement. So if you're just making an announcement like in this essay I will explore, that's an announcement of topic or an announcement of focus, but that's not the same as really making a thesis statement. A thesis statement makes a point or an assertion. It's based on your research and what you've learned and what you're trying to argue or persuade, even in a research paper. A lot of times students think that because it's a research paper, it should be informative, when most of the time research papers should have an element of persuasion to them because you're trying to convince someone of something, even if it's just that this is important, then you should be listening or learning about this. So just remember that a good thesis statement is not going to make an announcement, it's going to make an assertion. And you want to aim for two parts of your thesis. It should make your topic clear, and it should make your assertion or your point about your topic clear. So those are my tips related to thesis statements, and I will be looking at your working thesis statements this week in the discussions. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about this week is documentation, because you're gathering sources and of course you're working on your annotated bibliography this week, and soon you're going to be integrating those sources into your actual research paper. Now you want to keep in mind that you have to document everything. And when I say everything, what I'm saying is that a lot of students know that you should document in your text quotes that you get from your sources. So quotations go inside quotation marks. We know to cite at the end. Most students understand that. But what you may not also know is that you should be citing any summarized or paraphrased information as well. So even if you're putting information in your own words, you have to provide in-text documentation for it. Now in APA, we use the parenthetical references where you put the author's last name, the year, and the page or paragraph number. And then of course you give the full bibliographic information at the end of your paper on your references list. But you do want to make sure that you have lots of in-text documentation. It's kind of like a good sign when you see lots of in-text citations in your paragraphs that you are citing responsibly. Now, you don't want to cite your own original ideas or analysis. You don't have to cite that. But remember, if you paraphrase, summarize, or quote, you've got to have in-text documentation immediately after that information. Another good thing to remember is that you have to cite anything that's not common knowledge, even if you knew it before you wrote the paper. Now that's where things get tricky. One of the rules that we have is that if you are presenting information that wouldn't be common knowledge, that everybody wouldn't know, that you need to let your readers know where that information comes from. It adds to your credibility as a writer. So what you do is, if you have some information that you already knew but you know it's not common knowledge, then you have to go and find a source and then add that source information and then cite it. I have this great example. I had a student who had grown up in Mexico, and he was writing his paper on the Mexican Revolution. It was full of a lot of really specific information about that revolution. Very important paper, very interesting read, but it didn't have any in-text documentation. So I talked to him and I explained that he needed to cite all of this specific information. And he explained that where he grew up in Mexico, that all the children were taught this to such an extent that to him it was common knowledge. So then, of course, we had to explain, well, since we're in America and most Americans would not know those details, that it should be cited. And so he had to go and find a source where he could get that same information and cite it. So you do have a burden. As a writer, the burden is on you to cite and document and build your credibility as a writer. And it is a lot of work, and I know it is, and I'm here to support you. So if you have any questions as you're digging into this process, please let me know. I hope this short video is helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the discussions. Have a good week, everyone.